In the morning in Colorado's alpine forests, when the sunrise light caresses pine tree needles from dawn's acute angles, the green pine trees glow with a golden-edged radiance like the page edges of an old family Bible. The air, still from a night of cold and not yet stirred by afternoon heat and wind, carries the sounds of songbirds on distance, the low hum of road traffic up mountain slopes, and makes the creaks of trees waking in the warm morning light echo around open paths, like the way we sometimes remember the echoes of our names being said by the dead we've loved. Colorado's Berthoud Pass is such a place. Snowbound much of the year, accessible in winter by only the bravest and most experienced snowshoers, the short summer hiking season retains, well into July, winter's snowy overhangs. Cold air meets hot rocks warmed by the sun. Summer snow turns pink with algae, mirroring the bright colors of Colorado's wildflower season. The alpine lakes along the Berthoud Pass don't realize ice off until late July. Here, summer and winter mix constantly through the warmest months, like memory and dream mixing in pleasant sleep. Above 11,000 feet, air thins. Wind may be a breeze at the ground, but not far above it rips apart clouds like an angry child tearing up a failing test. Hikers here experience a closeness to the sun and elements unavailable at lower elevations. There's a connection between hiker and environment, and not a pleasant one when the weather turns. From elevation, the sounds of cities dwindle. Past high ridges above treeline, where road noise evaporates, a lone hiker experiences the closest a person can to true silence. We are never, at any point in our lives, immersed in silence. No distance from city, no distance from humans, no amount of soundproofing can give us true silence. In 2004, I visited Park City, Utah with my family. I had an opportunity to take a mountain bike up a ski lift and rode it to the furthest point on the trails that I could. The furthest from town, from the lifts, from where other cyclists turn to keep riding the trails and make the most of their day pass fee. I wanted to experience true silence. Nowhere could I see any sign of nearby civilization. I set my bike on the ground, found a flat rock, closed my eyes, and sat as the wind stilled and birds took their midday quiet. In meditation practice, a technique exists with diligent concentration to push away sound, to tune out noises and hear the faintest of distant sound. For a time, I focused on pushing away the nearby sound, of turning my ears off to the air's vibration. I sought through that practice to find true silence. No silence existed. To my great disappointment, a constant ringing, a sustained pitch and cadence filled my ears with a painful electric vibrato. The more I concentrated on the absence of ambient sound, the louder, more pressing, more needy the electric hum became. It sounded like a tiny, remote-controlled car motor running at full tilt but connected to nothing. I concentrated so deeply on silence, when a mosquito flew by my ear, it sounded like the cacophony of a freight train. Silence cannot be had. That ringing was confirmation of life. That ringing was inescapable, the ever-present background sound to our daily routines, our joys, our tragedies. That ringing was the sound of my nervous system transmitting sensation, muscle movements, and thought. That ringing was the ever-present sound of my living soul communicating with my body. To not hear it will be, I think, the last sensation I have in life. Ascending a Colorado 13er, especially one like Mount Flora, can take us close to silence. A hike like that takes the hiker to a place where the sounds are gentle breeze, marmot calls, footfalls on rock and gravel, trees creaking as the sun heats them from one side, and, sometimes, trucks engine braking on the Berthoud Pass. We cannot experience the purity of silence in our ears, but a hike like this and a place like this can deliver unto us a silence of spirit, a pure calm removed for a time from the rest of our lives. That, I argue, is the best silence we can have. In the 1870s, 150 years before this video was conceived, Edward Berthoud surveyed the Colorado Rockies for the Colorado Central Railroad. Berthoud's job was to find a pass through the Rockies for the railroad to reach Salt Lake City and then California. Berthoud surveyed what is now the Berthoud Pass and deemed it, rightfully, unsuitable for rail traffic without extensive tunneling. Hiking in the early morning in areas like Mount Flora provides a connection with the people who lived in the area hundreds of years ago. I don't mean only people like Edward Berthoud who explored the mountains at a time when they were far wilder and far less safe. Before Berthoud, these passes were known to trappers and later miners, many of whom are forgotten to history, but who shared their knowledge with the men who made sure that history remembers their names. I mean also people before the trappers and miners, the people for whom the walks along these ridges would have been rites of passage, pathways to hunting grounds, or transits between seasonal homes. Mount Flora is one of the peaks known as the Botanist Peaks, a subgroup within the James Peaks. The Botanist Peaks are Grays, Torrey, Perry, James, Audubon, Engelmann, Guyot, Flora, and Eva. Mount Flora's name has two origin stories, one of which seems to carry greater credibility. The less likely origin is that Flora, which of course is Latin for flower, was the name picked because the peak has many, many wildflowers. That said, so do most all of Colorado's peaks. More likely, Mount Flora is named for William Byers' sister-in-law, Flora Summer Thomas, mother of Colorado author and poet Chauncey Thomas. This story carries greater credibility because William Byers had a great deal of influence in early Colorado. As the founder of the Rocky Mountain News, his editorials swayed many opinions, making and breaking political careers. As a footnote, Chauncey Thomas had his ashes scattered on Mount Flora, an additional indicator that the story of the mountain being named for his mother is the accurate story. Alpine peaks often have in their ridge and saddle basins lakes formed by the piling of debris as the mountains calve, age, mature, and beautify. Mount Flora too has such a lake, a small aquamarine gift named Lake Ethel. As for who Ethel was, that seems lost to history. None of the people other peaks were named after knew or had a direct connection to an Ethel. And though Ethel herself may not be remembered, we can appreciate the lake which bears her name. Reaching Lake Ethel from the trails that lead to Mount Flora would be a challenging off-trail walk and scramble. The lake can be appreciated for its serenity and relative untouched nature from the Mount Flora peak, looking downward over a steep talus field, a view that would induce vertigo in the most ardent of climbers. The rocks on Mount Flora that look over Lake Ethel have a blind overhang with no way to know how far they extend over the talus field, or whether anything beneath them provides support. That said, people have made it to Lake Ethel and reported below-average cutthroat trout prospects. Summiting Mount Flora after the air's morning stillness leaves, the winds drive like a hellified trucker on a midnight run to meet a deadline. The wind on the ridge saddle and summit are as unforgiving as an 1800s Catholic school nun. They whip and punish, fill the ears with a loud howl that explains why people once believed in mythical monsters like banshees and wendigos. The wind lashes at the face and, given time and unprotected skin, breaks cracks in lips, leads damp noses to bleed, and pulls moisture from exposed flesh, amplifying the effects of sunlight. Is it any wonder that the vast array of wildflowers and succulents on Mount Flora are short, stout plants that hide like frightened children in the nooks and crevices between rocks? The plants never reach more than inches tall, never needing more height to take in the full potential of the sun, Knowing more height would simply break them in the wind and make them the target for marmots and pika. The microcosmos of life on Mount Flora circulates around these small patches of flowers and succulents that greedily take in what little moisture the summit provides in the summer and convert it into their brief lives. The hike from Berthoud Pass to the Mount Flora summit is an easy 13er hike. In Colorado, many 13ers present great and challenging hikes. Mount Flora is not one and is accessible to a large array of hikers. The hike begins on the Colorado Mines Peak Service Road, switching back a few times until it reaches the Mount Flora Trail. Then the trail cuts a distinct, ugly line across the side of the Colorado Mines Peak to the saddle with Mount Flora. Hiking multiple false summits and a few easy rock fields, the hiker will eventually reach Mount Flora's summit, marked only by a trail marker and views of the surrounding peaks. Mountain ranges from a 13er summit look like saw teeth cutting the sky away from the ground and give the sense that at any time the sky could be pulled back, separated, bifurcated from the ground, which has it forever trapped and pinned down. But that's just a sense, and the sky cannot exist without ground, like ground cannot exist without sky. The point they meet on the horizon proves that the one defines the other and that neither can exist without its partner. They are forever linked and trapped, for good or ill, whether they like it or not, because existence is preferable to non-existence. For the photographer, 13er peaks provide a set of potential photos not available on higher peaks. The higher 14er peaks still loom above the 13ers, towering like parents over their children, owners over their dog, giving lift and height to backgrounds, showing elevation over lower-lying foregrounds, and providing height in horizon-dominated images. 13ers are better for mountain peak landscape photography than 14ers, simply because they afford the landscape photographer better backgrounds. Ocean and large lake photos are, of course, among the most boring landscapes. The horizon splits the scene lengthwise, like an axe through lumber, clean, creating that distinct line between sky and ground that proves their permanent link. But a straight line presents no true visual interest in and of itself. A straight line is a perfect line, and nothing exists that can be called more boring than perfection. Beauty hides and plays in imperfection. The imperfect lines and angles of distant peaks, of mutating and tearing clouds, of jagged rocks and talus fields, of curved alpine lake shorelines, and of smooth, water-worked granite in rivers and waterfalls. Beauty and imperfection, like sky and ground, coexist together, and to remove one necessarily removes the other. Hikes like Mount Flora immerse the hiker or photographer in that natural, unpredictable, time-broken, and imperfect beauty. On quiet hike days, they provide the external silence of solitude, removal from the harried cries for attention from our phones or computers, and remove us, in as much as possible, from a sense of and participation in time so that we can enjoy the setting, the accomplishment, and the imperfection playground that inspires in most a great and unyielding sense of awe that fills our heads like the electric ringing of life, with an amazement for what our planet can create given the eons needed to do so.